back, session 5 with the Persuasion speech, and I've titled mine, "The U.S. should institute a recycling law and make it mandatory." Over the next few minutes, I'd like to share with you some facts and then some of my experiences living abroad as to why I believe that this should happen. Quick overview, we're going to talk about why recycling is important, the environmental and economic impacts, and then the comparison of legislation between the European Union, like I said, it is mandatory here in Europe, and then the legislation that exists in the United States. And we'll conclude all that with a biblical perspective and why, from the biblical point of view, it is important that we recycle and take care of the planet. So, just a quick visual, this mountain of trash you see here is from a U.S. landfill, and everybody knows about how big these tractors are. Just for a quick size comparison, it's on top of a mountain of trash. We can imagine how much trash that is. In fact, according to the Center for Sustainability and Commerce at Duke University, 4.3 pounds of trash is produced by the average person in the United States each day. And the U.S. population was recorded during a census as of July 4th, 2016 at over 3.2 million people. That's 1.3 trillion pounds of trash produced in the United States every single day. Now, again, that's what's produced. That doesn't necessarily determine what is recycled and what's not. But how much does each one of you contribute to that 1.3 trillion pounds of trash? Matter of fact, I knew a family in the United States at one point in time that would put out 6 cans, full-size cans of trash out on the curb each week. Here where I live in Italy, our roadside pickup only happens once every 2 weeks. It's every other week, and we only have a can big enough, we're only allowed a can big enough to fit 2 13-gallon bags. So if we didn't recycle, we would actually be drowning in our own garbage. So the environmental impacts of that. In the United States, there's over 3,500 landfills, which hold 55% of that generated waste. And landfills are the second largest source of human-produced methane emissions into the atmosphere. And what methane is it's a greenhouse gas. And what greenhouse gases do, according to the EPA, is they trap radiation and they trap heat. And so if we're producing, which is produced naturally through a source of different things out in the wild with animals and different bacteria. However, if we're producing extra, then we could potentially accelerate some sort of climate change. This isn't a global warming conversation, but it is something to be aware of. And methane itself, before it dissipates, when it's in the atmosphere, has a 12-year lifespan, and all of these stats are according to the EPA. The economic impacts. CalRecycle, which is the Environmental Protection Agency for the state of California specifically, actually wrote in a pamphlet that they published, which to inform personnel or people in California why they should recycle. The recycling a ton of waste has 2 times the economic impact of burying it in the ground. Okay, and an additional ton pays for $101 more in salaries and wages, $275 more in goods and services, and $135 more in sales. What all that means, reusing materials cuts the cost of that initial production. So if we're making a plastic bottle, there's different scientific processes and everything else to take that raw material and turn it into that plastic bottle. But if we're reusing those plastic bottles, or even a glass bottle, where you take the label off, everybody washes it, and then it's refilled and reproduced, it actually cuts that initial cost down exponentially. In fact, a recycling plant will actually create 36 jobs, whereas a landfill only creates about 6 jobs. So it's actually better for the economy as far as job creation as well. And that funding can be reallocated. So companies that are doing these things, if they spend less money producing things, then we can spend money on things like healthcare. So a comparison to legislation. So the legislation in the EU was actually established in 2008 and mandated that all countries within the EU incorporate into their own national law by 2010. So here in Italy, our refuse must be separated before it is thrown out. That's actually across Europe, but I'll speak to my experience in Italy. And ours is separated into plastic, certain metals like aluminum and tin go in that bin as well. And the paper and cardboard go together. Glass has its own bin, and then bio or biodegradable, or what we call wet waste, which is certain things like food or compost, would actually go into its own bin as well. These are picked up for our neighborhood down the road in big dumpster bins. And then our roadside or mixed trash is non-recyclables. Like I said, 2 13-gallon bags is all we get, and it goes out and is picked up every other week. Within the United States, though, there is no actual federal legislation. It's left to municipalities in the states. So there's no federal, nothing federal. The closest thing they have is the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which was established in 1976. And it abolished all open dumps, so that was good. And it heavily regulated landfills to maximize the environmental protection, but it didn't really, I mean, it helps, but not as much as recycling would help. So what that does is it's multiple layers of different plastics in the ground to prevent seepage or leakage, and actually the groundwater is tested regularly as well to make sure that none of the toxic materials that could potentially be in that landfill are affecting the environment too negatively. The dirt access roads have to be watered multiple times a day to keep any possible toxic dust from different materials that could have been thrown into that landfill from emitting into the air and getting in the atmosphere. And the refuse has to be covered with dirt, which keeps out critters and wildlife and things like that within a certain amount of time. And forgive me, I can't remember the numbers on that, but within a certain amount of time to minimize that methane release that we talked about earlier into the atmosphere. So to wrap everything up and into this conclusion, even though some of the United States, like I said, California is beginning to do this, states like Illinois and others on the East Coast are instituting a certain mandatory recycling, a more definitive stance from the United States, from the actual federal government should be taken to actually protect that. Because if it is read, the emission levels in the United States, it's just in the atmosphere. So we have the same atmosphere as China, we have the same atmosphere as everybody else. So even if in California they're doing it, if they're not doing it in Texas, the atmosphere is still the same. So whatever happens in California, those methane levels will be read across in Texas as well. But if the U.S. adopts the EU's waste management laws, the country will become a cleaner and safer place for our children. And what I mean by adopting is we just have to have a system that it holds people accountable. In the EU, if we are not found not recycling, there's a hefty fine that goes with that, and the severity of the fine is dependent upon the severity of the offense. I have actually personally witnessed during a roadside pickup the garbage personnel cutting open the bags and making sure that you separated making sure the people separated the waste properly. And then if you don't, you are reported and they get you with a fine. So from the biblical perspective, why is it important that we take care of the environment? Well, in Psalm 24:1, we're told that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the whole world and all who live in it. And what this is King David is actually reminding us that we are to be good stewards of God's creation. So God actually gave Adam dominion in Genesis over the land to take care of it when he was creating, and to be its caretaker. Therefore, we have a responsibility to take care of the earth that he gave us. And I'll just leave you guys with one other quote, which is, with every right, as we have the right to live here on the earth because God gave it to us, but with every right comes an obligation and a responsibility. As I stated here, it is our responsibility to take care of this. And I would love to tell you guys who actually said that quote, but I can't remember his name offhand, but it's not my own. So again, I would like to make sure that he gets that credit. If you Google that, with every right comes a responsibility and an obligation. So it's just something to think about. Again, it's been a great 5 weeks. I really appreciate all the feedback that you guys have given me and helped me. And I look forward to the rest of my classes here at CCU. Good luck and God bless to all of you.